Welcome to the Asking Why podcast. I'm your host, Clint Davis, and we're reintroducing this because I totally botched the introduction for Martha, just to tell myself. Martha's come on before, and we did a partial podcast, and then we had technical difficulties, and she had to leave. And so I was trying to recount her backstory, and I totally ruined it. And so we had a really good laugh before starting this whole thing. So yes. I'm going to let you introduce yourself so I don't screw it up again. So Martha, she's a writer and an author, and she goes to Broadmoor Baptist Church, and we have a lot of great connections, and people are like, you need to have Martha on, tell her story. So we had Martha on. She told some of her story, and then we're redoing it now. So Martha, tell us who you are, and,
yes.
And I'll shut my mouth.
Oh, it's great. It is great to be here, and I thank you so much for your interest in this particular story and in the community that I'm going to talk about today. And it's interesting because one of my favorite words since becoming a part of this community of brain injury is perseverance. And I think we've already seen that in our attempts to do this program.
That's right.
So God has a little bit of a sense of humor
Yes.
for me sometimes because perseverance is sort of my life word
I bet.
that I am learning, and joy. So we've hit both of those.
That's right. So take us back. So your husband's been injured for how long?
12 years.
12 years. So if I recall, what happened is, now that my brain's working, he fell.
Right.
Right. And had a traumatic brain injury.
Correct.
And then that kind of sent you on this trajectory of
Yes.
writing. And were you writing before?
You know, the interesting thing about that is I was writing before. I grew up in a preacher's home.
Okay.
There were 5 of us kids. And so
And you're from here?
actually I grew up in Oklahoma City.
Okay.
I was born in Texas, grew up in Oklahoma City, and now I'm in Louisiana. So that's
How long have you been
interesting.
at Broadmoor?
Oh, gosh, since probably 2009-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where did you and your husband meet?
We met here in Shreveport.
Oh, you did?
We did.
Okay.
We met. We were sort of high school sweethearts.
Okay.
We got married very young. And then I went on to get a teaching degree in secondary education, English. So I'm a book lover. I'm a word lover. You know,
Yeah.
that's just sort of my wheelhouse.
And where were you teaching?
I taught at Caddo Magnet
Okay.
High School.
All right.
Until January of 1991, when we adopted our older daughter, which is a very cool story. I'll save that for another podcast. But we had struggled with infertility.
Another perseverance?
Yeah, for about 6 or 7 years, and her adoption was quite miraculous. We had 6 days' notice.
Wow.
So it's interesting that I think when I look back at my life, God likes to put me in situations where my life seems very comfortable. And then all of a sudden there's just like a shift. And I'm not sure why. Maybe everyone's life kind of goes that way, but I've noticed that mine does. So yeah, we had 6 days. Laura was a beautiful baby girl. We were thrilled to death. I had planned to go back and continue teaching and be a mom, and then I got pregnant 3 months later with our second daughter.
Goodness gracious. There's so many stories of people who adopt and who struggle with infertility, who they adopt and then they're pregnant. Like within
It's just remarkable
wow.
because we had not been able to have children. So we have a second daughter, Jessie, and they have each just had a birthday because they're 12 months and 2 weeks apart,
Yeah.
which is sort of like twins. And I did not go back to work, needless to say.
Okay. And what was David doing?
He did work for Brown Builders in
Okay.
Bossier City.
Yeah.
He was a superintendent, and he ran the trim crew, and he built houses, and he's still good at it. He doesn't work anymore because of the brain injury, but I think he has a lot of creative abilities.
Yeah.
And he likes to work with his hands.
Okay.
And since the brain injury, I think it's interesting to see how that has manifested in other ways. So I'll talk about creativity and healing a little bit because we've seen that happen, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So you guys are doing life, you get married, you adopt a child, because I mean that 6 years of infertility is a big struggle. Were you guys going to Broadmoor and in church at that point?
We were actually members at Brookwood
Okay.
at that point.
Awesome.
We had a great Sunday school class
Okay.
and some very strong prayer warriors who walked through all that with us.
Yeah.
It was a sweet celebration when those girls came along.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, that's a fun thing to watch. I mean, it's really hard to weather, but seeing the joy of sharing that with community, and then having that blessing come in. I mean, that's huge. I bet everybody's really shocked when you were pregnant.
It was pretty funny. We were really, David and I were very shocked.
Yeah. How did you, I mean, like, I do kind of want to hear that. So, I mean, you have an adopted daughter who's like, 13 months?
She's 3 months old.
Right.
Like, she's an infant.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. She's a baby.
And I had morning sickness, right? And I'm just like,
Like
surely not.
Yeah.
Surely not.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yes.
That's awesome.
And so, I'm sure you have children.
Yeah,
you
2
have,
boys. Yep. 8
right.
and 11. Yep.
Right. So yours are pretty close.
Yeah, decently close. Yeah.
Bump that 1 year close.
No, for sure. You got Irish twins without, the Irish. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was great. And I'm just going to kind of put this into the story, into the timeline, because I've talked about it before, speaking actually at Broadmoor at a women's night out. And it's about God's timing in my life. And because we did go through that struggle with fertility, there was a lot of asking why.
Mm-hmm.
I was teaching high school English. Every year I had a student who was pregnant in my class. And that was hard.
That's tough.
I'd had a miscarriage.
Mm-hmm.
That was very hard. And we were just at an impasse. But both those girls came along in God's timing at that time. And then when you fast forward to 2013, when David had his injury, our younger daughter was a senior at Tech. Our older daughter was 1 year out of Tech because they do everything 1 year apart, right? And what I came to see in retrospect is that at that time, those girls were at the perfect age to be there for me and for David at the most critical point in our lives. And they did. They stepped up like champs, unbelievably. They weren't married. They didn't have kids. They weren't starting college. So the beauty of that relationship with Christ is when you look back and you're like, man, why? Why did I have to wait so long for a baby? And then you look forward and you're like, oh.
He knew it was coming.
He knew what was coming. And that's just amazing to me. So I still ask why, obviously. We all do. But I don't, but I trust him more with the wait.
Yeah. Well, the beauty of God is that he allows us to ask why.
Correct.
He doesn't always give us the answer in the immediate. But then we get the macro answer, with suffering, with pain, that.
Right. And sometimes there is no answer.
Yeah. Not one that we get in this life. Yeah. I know some people love to stack their list up of what they're going to ask God when they get in heaven, I think I'm going to be too happy to just be there and have made it in by the skin of my teeth.
Exactly. Like, let's go. What's next?
That's right. So tell us the story a little bit of the fall. And I know me and you talked about this before, but, what happened so the listener understands kind of what that's been like for you and how that, led you to so much of the ministry stuff you're doing now. Yes,
it's things I never thought I would be doing, I'm doing, which again is just the way that God operates. So I love how you said, I'm trying to hook onto that, the community that we had around us. And in preparing for this podcast, I was really thinking about, like, if I had to frame up what I wanted to say, I think it would start with connection, which is what we had through our church families and our families, and how God transforms that into community. So we had those connections through our girls played soccer. We were active in church. I went to a ladies' Bible study. I had those connections in my life. And then when this trauma hit us, those became community. Those people stepped up, and they were like the walls around us. So maybe because David used to be a builder, I don't know, but I think about it as like that foundation.
There's a foundation, yeah.
And then those walls came around us. So December 2013, as I said, our girls were finishing up college. Laura had already graduated. We were getting ready for Christmas, all the busyness of December. It was a Sunday afternoon. David was on the house blowing leaves off with a leaf blower, which he had done a bunch of time. We lived in that house 25 years.
Yeah.
So, but a tall roof. And I don't know what happened, but he fell. And I was home. I heard the ladder fall. I heard him hit. We had a large deck out back that he had built. So it was a big crash. And, of course, called the 911, rushed him to LSU. And those people that we had connected with showed up, and they were there for us from the very beginning. Which, again, when I think back about the people that I've met in this journey, to do that in isolation is much harder. So I'm very grateful that that foundation was there.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people will say, like, how do people do it without God, or how do people do it without community? And I always say, well, they don't do it very well.
You just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the consequences, the long-term suffering, the undue suffering, we're going to suffer. But when we do it in isolation, without community, without the body of Christ, like, the suffering's worse.
That's true.
You know?
That's true.
And
I think it's maybe in my pre-brain injury, happy little life that I had, I took for granted. And when you go through something, you kind of are very grateful.
Yeah.
And less taken for granted.
So what were the first kind of months, a year or so like? What?
Yeah. Well, in the movies, when someone hits their head and has a coma, about a week later, they wake up and they're like, hey, what's been going on? Let's go home. And it does not look like that in reality. He had a severe brain shear. So I'm sure you know about the brain, but it's like the white matter in your brain. So because of the velocity of his fall, his brain sheared back and then it came on. So it was a very severe brain injury. He was in a coma from December 13th until the first week of January. Completely non-responsive.
I bet that was so scary.
Very scary. Didn't open his eyes, no response. And of course, you just don't know. You don't know. So on Christmas Day, 2013, a doctor at LSU pulled us aside as a family and delivered the news that he would probably always be a vegetable and we should start looking for some facility to take him from the hospital into a lifetime of care.
Wow.
On Christmas morning, we got that news. And that was very hard.
It was just you and your daughters there at the time?
My sister was there.
Okay.
My sweet sister, who's 7 years older than I am and is such a sweetheart. And I'm so glad she was there because she asked all the important questions.
Yeah, it's so hard when you're in the middle of it to think about what to ask.
Because we were all just like,
tunnel vision.
What's happening? Yes. So again, very grateful for the people that God placed in my life. But people everywhere were praying for us. Really, like around the world. My daughter had put Facebook posts and, just our wider community got the message out. And, people talk about prayer and the power of prayer and how that's kind of lightweight. And I guess there's an argument, like I'm praying for you doesn't seem like much. But when you've been on the receiving end of really powerful prayer, that's life-changing.
It really is, yes.
It is. So on first week of December at some point, I was in the room with David. My daughter was standing on one side. He was on the other side. And we had an old CD of Journey's greatest hits because he's a big Journey fan. It's just like playing. Like we're trying to wake him up. We found out later you're never supposed to do that. It's supposed to be real quiet for a guy with a brain injury. We were doing it all wrong. But he sneezed and he opened his eyes.
You said December. You mean January?
It was in January.
Yes,
Thank you.
okay.
Yeah, so it was weeks later.
Okay.
So he was in a coma almost a month.
Right. So you get on the 25th, hey, he's going to be a vegetable the rest of his
Correct.
life. Just biggest shock of your life, I'm sure. Just devastating.
Yes.
You're in there in January singing Journey. He sneezes and opens his eyes.
He opens his eyes, and then my daughter said something, and he tracked his eyes to her. And then I said something, and he tracked his eyes to me. So
What in the world? Are we all freaking out?
we were freaking out because it's like, he's there. He's in there.
Yeah.
He's not it's not going to be that outcome that we were given. And I respect what the doctors did. What could they do?
They're going off stats.
Absolutely. And anyways,
Miracles don't really deal with stats very
they
well.
don't deal with stats very well. And so that sort of began the next phase of the journey. We went to a long-term skilled nursing, life care on Linwood. It's not there anymore, but those people were great. Kind of got him to the next place of rehabilitation. And we were transferred to Toro in New Orleans
Okay.
at the brain injury rehab floor during Mardi Gras.
Oh, wow.
So life sailed on. It's like February now. And we were at a brain injury floor in New Orleans in Mardi Gras. And that has just been a funny experience.
I
Like
bet.
they would do like Mardi Gras parades up and down the halls of the brain injury floor. Throw beans.
That's crazy.
It's New Orleans is such a charming, interesting place. But the people of New Orleans were very kind to us, and they embraced David and me in our journey. And boy, we just have some funny stories there from him recovering.
I bet. Beads and Brain Injuries. That's
Beads
a good
and
book.
Brain Injuries is kind of a good book. But those people knew their stuff, and it was focused on brain injury, and he recovered so much. And that, again, is an answer to prayer and a real blessing to me, because if he had not had that opportunity to get that intensive care early on in a brain injury, then your brain doesn't recover as well.
Right.
So the intervention needs to be really early. And I tell people that I work with now, to try to do as much as you can as early as you can, and and it helps you get more back. So we were very blessed to be there at Toro, even during New Orleans. I'm just laughing because I had family members who wanted to come see us, drive down from North Louisiana, and they would get to town and they're like, all the streets are barricaded. We can't even get to the hospital. I'm like, I
Mardi
know,
Gras.
it's Mardi Gras. I don't know what to tell you.
That's crazy.
But those people were precious. We had about a month there at Toro, and I stayed at the hospitality house behind the hospital each night. So there were some funny things, but there were some hard things, and I'm going to tell you one of them.
Sure.
He couldn't walk yet, so they were working on that. So each night, I would stay until he had his last round of meds. So it would be about 10 o'clock at night. And they'd give him his last rounds. And I would go downstairs, and a security guard would walk me to the hospitality house behind the hospital. But before I left, the nurse would have to strap him into his bed with a big belt that strapped him in. Because if he got up, he could fall. And nobody wanted that to happen.
Right.
But he was awake enough to know he did not want that. And every night was hard, because we would have that, he'd say, don't let them strap me in. Don't let them strap me in. And I would have to say, you have to, this is for your good. It's going to protect you. And then I'd just have to walk away and let him do it. And I could, walking away, I could hear his voice down the hall, like, come back, don't let them, So there are some
That's real
hard parts to people that live through a loved one with a brain injury. And I don't want to sugarcoat that.
Yeah.
There are some hard parts. And we never knew really how much of David we would get back. And he did overcome the odds. He's a very optimistic person.
So at that point when he was
Yeah.
doing that, was he kind of out of it? Like, where was he at developmentally?
He's still very out of it.
Okay.
So here's a funny, when we first got there, they did a quick eval. What's your name? Where are you from? Who's your wife? How old are you? And he said, I'm 25. And they're like, what? And he goes, yep, 25. Of course, my girls are there with me. They're college age. We're all looking at him. And we're like, Dad, how old are you? He's like, 25.
So sure.
Yeah. So maybe 25 is our default age. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Maybe that's the ideal.
golden-
That's the restoration age that we'll all be in heaven when we're.
Oh, maybe so.
Yeah.
Maybe so. But so there was deficits that needed to be worked on, physical, mental, and anyways, that's where we started. After a month, we came back. We did a lot of outpatient therapy here in Shreveport. They were great. But we just sort of got to the end of the road with that. because your insurance is finally like, well, you should be well by now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So talk about that a little bit, how insurance and maybe the medical costs and all those things were also stressful. I mean, that tends to be also added burden, right?
Yes, because one day he had a really good job and we were double incomes. And the next day that was not true. God did provide for us in a lot of unexpected ways. I was working actually at the church in the children's ministry at that time.
That's right. Yeah.
And they were able to arrange the family medical leave.
I have such a vague memory of this because we came to Broadmoor in 2013, I think. So that's when,
when all this was happening.
Yes. So I remember hearing some of the story from, just general people. But so when I think back on it, I'm like, how much of that is like me remembering it or, from being there or hearing it from Tracy Pusho or somebody,
all those different bits
and then I've heard
pieces.
your testimony and seen you in the children's ministry when our kids came
Sure.
and some of that. So
yes, but I was so thankful to have a job that worked with, and we did get the family medical leave. So I could go because I've since then spoken with wives and spouses of people who go to Tier in Houston or to Baylor in Dallas or Toro in New Orleans, and they have to stay and work, and their loved one is just there getting care.
It's gotta be so hard.
Yeah, that would be very hard. So I'm grateful that I was able to be there with him and just sort of more hands-on. I think he recovered more quickly, and we'd been married by that time, like 30-something years.
Wow.
So
I mean, that makes a huge difference.
that does make a big difference.
When you're thinking, how do I get through something with somebody suffering, when you're newlyweds and you're going through stuff,
where you don't really know as many things about that person.
Right. And I mean, you're trying to figure it out and you're grieving in ways that, you all had a full marriage and a full life and, that's...
And it just kind of turned on a dime.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's pros and cons to that, right? I mean,
there are.
I mean, that had to be really hard to see this person that you've woken up with and gone to sleep with every night for 30 years.
Yes.
Not knowing you're going to get him back.
Yes. And I was determined to get that person back. Here's the interesting thing. That person did not come back. So he is a different person.
Of course.
So now when in our just conversation, run-of-the-mill conversations with David and my family, I call him David the First and David the Second, which is sort of hilarious. So there are things.
It's a little dark, but
it's a little dark. I guess.
You gotta have some dark humor to get
You
through
do.
suffering.
Seriously, the humor helps, light or dark. So if there's something that he did before, which is so interesting, when you live with someone 30 years, it's like, this is how they make a bed.
Yeah,
this is
get
how
coffee,
they
yeah.
get coffee. And it was very different. And I would just say, well, David the First would have a fit, if I did this. And then David the Second isn't bothered about it, but, doesn't bother him.
That's wild to have the experience.
It is. And I think about, in the process of this, people who have family members with dementia, Alzheimer's, those folks go through a personality change.
Yes.
They become not the person they were. And I think there's the book, The Long Goodbye, I think is what that's called, where you're slowly telling someone goodbye. So I've thought about that in terms of brain injury, where it feels like the long hello.
Yeah. Oh,
so
I
it's
like
more
that.
like, oh, hello. Who are you today now?
Yeah.
You're a different person from the person that I knew before. So in a way, we had to recreate our marriage. We had to fall in love with each other again and not feel like strangers. So there was it's kind of interesting how that plays out, because part of the man I knew was there still, but in a very different way.
Yeah. So how long did it take, him to get to a stable place, or is he still recovering now? Like, how do you view all that?
It is a lifetime recovery with the brain injury, which is interesting because we've been going through some insurance stuff lately about just different things. And we had a person from an insurance agency say, well, we can't really consider him disabled because it's been more than 10 years ago. So he should be well now.
You're like, what?
We're like, that's just lack of education and
that's not how
information
this
about
works.
those things.
Yeah.
And it's like a child with autism. When they turn 12, it's not going to go away.
Right.
It's a neurological limitation that we just live with every single day and find ways to continue to recover. So it is a lifetime of recovery. The cool thing about the brain is that it will heal, and the neuroplasticity that takes place, some of those neurons will regenerate and find tracks around the part that's damaged. So I always hold out hope that there's recovery. But he was walking pretty well, talking pretty well, and pretty active, I would say, by a year later.
Oh.
And here's what I'm going to tell you. His brain injury was December 2013. Our daughter, Laura, our oldest daughter, got married in November 2014. So I was also planning a wedding.
Wow. Goodness. Well, I know that's, can be its own hell, even if you love your family.
A little bit. She is super organized.
Yeah.
She is such an organized little darling, and she did the lion's share of that. But in all of his therapy, he said, I want to walk my daughter down the aisle. I want to walk my daughter down the aisle. So he's very motivated.
What a motivator, yeah.
And the day of that wedding, he did that. And it was just like, pull out the
Everybody's
Kleenex. Yeah. The minister was like, okay, we all just need to take a moment here.
Yeah.
Before we get started.
Yeah.
But it was, it added a lot of joy to that year of recovery to be planning something good in the middle of a situation that was really kind of hard.
Yeah, and give him some motivation and direction and a purpose. And something very acute.
Yes. Yeah. So here's the flip side of that. Let's bump ahead to 2015. I'm working full time. He's pretty self-sufficient at the house. My younger daughter was in grad school, getting a degree to be an occupational therapist, which she had already chosen before he fell off the house. Just kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. So she was able to be home with him a lot when she wasn't in class. And we had what we called her OT gals. All of her OT friends would come over, and he was literally like the guinea pig.
Yeah, the test.
Yes, he was. And so that worked out pretty well for us.
Yeah.
They're trying all the different wonderful OT techniques that they had to present in class and everything. So that worked out pretty well. So she went on to do her rotations and left home, and it was back to just David and me. I was still working because we needed insurance. And a couple of times I drove home at lunch, and we lived near the church. On 2 different occasions, he was back on the roof.
Mm.
So when people ask about the recovery, what I try to explain is the physical, you can get back pretty well. But that judgment and the mental and the consequences.
Gosh, how did you feel when you pulled up and he was on the roof?
It was hard. It was one of the hardest days ever.
I bet.
Yeah, he was on the roof, and he had the ladder up by the house, and I don't even remember what he was doing up there. I don't think it was leaves. That he was getting branches off, maybe. But he came down and he said, I'm more careful now than I've ever been. I was like, you can't do this. I can't do this.
Yeah.
I was just shaking.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
What a traumatic response.
So my son-in-law came and picked up all our ladders and took them to their house to try to remove that temptation. But there are still times that that is every day that is a consideration, is what I'm about to say. So before I came here, I took him to my daughter's house, or he's at my daughter's house, and I have to remind him, don't go outside, don't answer the door, just stay inside. Because if any of those things happened, I don't know that his judgment would protect him.
His cognitive function is just not where it was, and so he might forget and just go back to doing what he seems like is normal and perfectly
Or
fine.
somebody could come to the door and say, I need to come in the house for a drink of water. And he would be, sure, come on in. In some ways, he's childlike. He's not a child. He's a full-grown man, and he's a wonderful person. But I have to, as his caregiver, reframe how we live our lives.
Yeah. That's got to be hard.
It is exhausting.
Yeah. Every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because it's not like it's going to be a time where you get to relax and not do that.
Correct. That's where my community comes in.
Yeah.
So I am very thankful that my younger daughter is also married now, and our older daughter has 2 sons, and we call them our TBI tribe. They're our tribe.
Yeah.
And I have a picture on my phone. I'll show you later. It's just a guy like a a mountain climber, like hanging off a cliff by one hand. And sometimes I'll just shoot them that picture. I don't even have to say words. I'm like, put that picture out to the tribe. And they're like, one of us is coming to get Dad. I know you need a break. So it's interesting because in the run of things, we're always like, well, what if you take him on Wednesday and Friday or Saturday night? Mom has a break every Sunday. And Clint, our lives are just not like that.
Yeah.
We just cannot nail it. I don't know. Maybe other people are better at that than us, but it's like the boys have a soccer game or I have to work later. It's just hard to do that. So
You mean to get a consistent schedule where it's like just every week the same thing? Yeah.
that's really, maybe other families do that. I would love to know how that's done.
Yeah, I don't think too many people have in 2026, the flexibility in their own life to nail something down. It's hard to get people to go to
Like
Bible
that.
study every week, much
Exactly.
less
Or church.
commit to something. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that speaks to our societal problem that has, I'm sure, impacted people caring for people in different ways that 50 years ago,
Yeah.
was different.
I wish, and this comes up continually at my caregiver support groups, the caregiver coffees, for men and women who are caring for people with neurological and physical disorders. I wish there was a place where they could go and do something productive and be together and socialize. And in my book, Nothing to Lose, it is a story of a young couple, and the husband has a brain injury. And spoiler alert, this is the end. But they create a space like that for people to feel productive and needed and important.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about the people with TBRI.
And just neurological
Yeah.
deficits. A lot of them sit at home and watch television all day.
That's sad.
And that breaks my heart. But it doesn't always have to be that way. Somebody will change it one day. Somebody will change that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a dream you have. Is there anything in the works for that for you?
Well, apart from the caregiver coffees.
Tell me about that. What is this?
So this is, I'm going to leave this flyer with you.
Oh, nice.
It's the third Tuesday of every month. We meet at Shreveport Rehab on Fern Avenue. And it is open to caregivers. I've never turned a caregiver away. It says neurological and physical disabilities.
Right.
I think that pretty much covers the spectrum, Clint.
Yeah.
So people who come, their spouse may have been a stroke survivor, working with someone that has dementia, caring for a loved one who's had a bad spinal cord injury or a brain injury. And we come and we have coffee and we just talk about things like you and I do. I'm also an ambassador for the Brain Injury Association of Louisiana, BIALA. That started about 3 years ago. So I have information and resources that I can give them if they're new to that caregiving lifestyle.
Martha, it's so incredible to me because you're not a dime a dozen, right? You're more of a diamond in the rough or a needle in a haystack. I mean, why? How can you go through something like this and then it turns into you giving back to the community versus collapsing? Like what is your, I mean, I probably know the answer, but I want to hear it from your mouth. Like what changed? Because so many people go through these things and become like the victim of the world. And look, that's not minimizing how bad these things suck and that suffering is awful and terrible and all the complications that come with it. But what if somebody's out there and they're like at the beginning of this, or maybe this happens to them next year and they've listened to this podcast, are there any kind of key things that happened or things that you looked to or that got you through the hard part? And then what transitioned into being like, oh, I didn't just survive this. I want to use this for other people.
That's a great question. So I hope I can answer that adequately. I think that it begins with my faith. Not that I'm the most, trust me, I've had the ups and downs. Trust me. The
Same.
ups and downs have been there. But that is a foundation. So I don't know that I can take the credit for how all of this transpired. But I heard a sermon
But
recently.
you participate.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I do. So I'm not just leaving all the heavy lifting to God, right?
That's right.
You got to persevere.
Yes.
That's true. But I think that's the starting point and I'm so grateful that my life intersected with the gospel at some point and I had that foundation. I think the second part, and my husband would agree to this, I think I'm pretty stubborn, which you can take as a negative, as a minus. I think it can sometimes be a plus.
Oh, it could be a big plus.
And the one thing I really desperately needed, I would say the first 4 to 5 years into our journey, was another caregiver to talk to.
Mm-hmm. And just didn't have it.
I didn't have it, but I was going to a ladies' Bible study, and one of the ladies that was in a group that I was in, when all that happened with David, a couple of years later, her husband had a stroke. And she remembered. She reached out to me and said, I'm falling apart. What do I do? I was like, let's meet for coffee. So she and I started meeting for coffee as two women who were caregivers for about a year or so. And then when I came on board with the Brain Injury Association of Louisiana, that was my first request. I said I would really love to set up caregiver coffees and just see if people will come. And it's been 2 years, and we've never had a time where no one came.
Wow.
So
that's incredible.
That's very satisfying to me.
I bet.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the last stage of grief is making meaning.
Right.
In the new stages anyway.
So I guess for me, I'm stubborn and in a small part.
Resilient is what I call it.
Resilient. We'll call it resilient. Or a little selfish because I'm like, I need this. And there isn't this thing that I need. Mm-hmm. So what do I need to do to create that thing?
Yeah. But even that, I mean, like, that's nothing but, to me, the Holy Spirit and the gospel, which is, because Christ has first done this for you, you can do this for other people. And so it's selfish in the sense that Jesus has saved me, thank God. But it doesn't stop with that. And I think that's the beautiful thing about your life and your mission and your purpose. And the reason you're writing and doing these things is, you believe that, you can be used for other people, and that this story and this suffering doesn't have to be just, isolated to just your life.
Correct. That there's purpose has been very meaningful. And just, I don't know how to explain this because maybe you'll understand. I was an English teacher, and I was in charge. This is what we read, and this is how we respond, and this is what we're doing next. And I had lesson plans written out
Systematic.
to the time. So much control, Clint.
Yeah. I don't know where your daughter gets it from.
Yeah, really. And then at some point during that brain injury journey, I was working. I've shared this with Tracy. Maybe this is why she thought of me for the podcast. I was working, been a hard day at work. I'd come home. David was just being difficult. Mm-hmm. It was a difficult day. And I just had it with everything. It was too much. And I just threw myself on the couch crying. I was just like, I can't do this. Mm-hmm. This is too hard. I can't do this. And I'm such a sassy person. I just said, God, you're going to have to fix this. Mm-hmm. You got to fix this because I can't do this. Mm-hmm. And it was really precious because he said, I'm not going to fix it. I'm going to use it. Mm. And I think that was a very pivotal point for me, like you're saying, to get up out of that life is terrible and be like, dust off my knees and be like, okay, how are you going to use this?
Yeah.
And he really has. And I think the letting go has been very joyful. So I'm going to tell you a couple of things about our life since. Because his therapy ran out, physical therapy, I started thinking of creative ways for him to continue to grow. So he took guitar lessons, piano lessons, just trying to keep that brain active, right? Mm-hmm. And I signed him up for fencing lessons.
Oh, wow. I've always wanted to do that.
I totally recommend that. So we had a wonderful coach here in Shreveport that worked with him in fencing. And, of course, I went along. I go everywhere he goes. So we were learning how to fence there with our swords. Also great couples therapy. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. You can really whack him.
But the beautiful thing, and I like to share this with people, in his recovery, he had probably about 4 or 5 years of well-meaning people, doctors, therapists saying, David, because of your brain injury, you're probably never going to be able to do this again. You know, you'll have limitations when you try to do this again. And that's their job. They have to tell us that.
Yeah.
When he was fencing, our coach would be teaching us, and then he would fence with David for a while, and he would pull him aside and say, David, I didn't teach you that. This is something that you came up with, and you're really good at this. You're doing really good. I mean, he didn't say that to make me feel better or David to feel better. That was an outside observation.
Yeah.
And I think for David, that was a pivotal moment.
Oh man, I bet. As a man, as a husband,
Yes.
you know, having somebody have to take care of you, you know, feeling like a failure, feeling like, you know, all of those things, man. That's gotta be so
he
hard.
was just being a coach. You
Yeah.
know, that's what coaches do. And it was randomly a fencing coach. But it's the power of words that you speak into people's lives. And I got to see that firsthand. But that was like a turning point for us. It's like, oh, well, there are things he could be really good at. So his latest thing is pottery.
Okay.
And we started here at the Playground. It's like a local pottery store. The owner there, Tessa, has been very kind to us.
Shout out to the Playground.
Shout out to the Playground. And it turns out he's very good at pottery. And it pulls together a lot of that former creativity that he had working with his hands. And so I actually brought you some as a thank you today. You get a piece of Dave's pottery.
That's awesome.
And I talk about that in my book, Nothing to Lose, how that man, he's a younger guy than David. It's not us. It's just sort of loosely based on us and other people's stories. But he finds outlets through art. And I think that often we forget that for people that are in recovery.
Yeah.
That it's not just a one little path that you go on where you're not good and then you get better. I think God uses a lot of different resources and people and just his whole creative universe to bring healing. And
That's right.
I think it's been kind of cool for me to learn that. I think as an English teacher, I would have been like, you know, do it this way. You know, do what the teacher says.
Oh, that's so true. So you're touching on something that's really important. What would you say is I mean, I'm sure there's a lot, but if there's a Martha 1 and a Martha 2,
Yep.
right? What would Martha 2 tell Martha 1, or somebody who hasn't been through this level of suffering that you couldn't have learned without it?
The power of love. The power of love. And yes, we were married a long time. Yes, we love each other. And it's not even a love that I could have for him that would get me through this. It's really God's love for me. So the power of God's love for me enables me to love David still on days when he is very hard to love. And to work in a community of people now with the Brain Injury Association who are also sometimes difficult and hard to love. So I guess I said that in a nutshell. I don't know.
No, that's beautiful. I mean, you know, that's what we would call self-regulation in the therapy speak.
Oh, okay.
You know, the ability to go, okay, this external thing is I'm feeling negative towards it, or it's doing something negative to me. How do I act out of peace instead of acting out of pain?
Yeah.
Because you're every day, right? You're being faced with all of the years of this stuff and hurdles to overcome and difficulties and someone who's being difficult to love at times. And yeah, instead of throwing your hands up, you know, and being done with it, we have to go to something greater than ourselves.
Exactly.
And something that's been done for us first. And if we don't actually believe that,
It's harder.
yeah, if we're entitled, I mean, that's one of the things
Yeah.
the more pain we're in, the more polarized we get with people, and then the more entitled we become.
Right.
I mean, that's like, man.
And then you begin to feel powerless.
Yes.
Right? It kind of shifts to the other way. But
Instead of being able to make empowered choices.
right.
You know, people who love control, they want to get control. And so it's like, well, you're never going to be in full control, but you can make empowered choices. So what can
Exactly.
I do with this right now? I cannot change that he's in a bad mood,
That's right.
But how do I self-regulate in the gospel and the good news? Take a deep breath and go, okay, here are my options. Which one am I going to choose? Peace or pain?
That's right. And I love it. And it's really that simple. It is.
I know.
It is really
it's
that
not easy to
simple.
do.
It's hard to do. Simple to see, hard to do.
Yeah.
I do agree with that. But I'll tell you, I remember like the exact moment that I fell in love with the brain injury community. And I'll briefly tell you about that because I'm pretty sure we're running short on time.
Oh, you're fine.
We have
Loving
a monthly support group. Aside from the Caregiver Coffee, we have a monthly support group that also meets at Shreveport Rehab through Think First, and it's a local nonprofit that promotes education and resources for people with brain and spinal cord injuries. They're great. They're wonderful.
Think First.
Think First.
All right.
Yes. Bubba Fletcher is...
That sounds familiar.
Oh, gosh. Bubba's wonderful. I could do a whole... You should get Bubba in for a
I
podcast.
should tell him to connect. I'll do it.
Yes, he would be so good. Anyways, they had asked me to do a Christmas craft with our brain injury group on Christmas. This is several years ago. And the teacher, right? I bring like a block of wood and a little stocking cap and little eyes we're going to draw. And it's all going to look like a snowman at the end. And I'm showing them, do this, do this, do this. And then it's a snowman. It's going to be great. It's fun. So we pass out all the supplies. And then about 20 minutes later, they're making snowmen, and like the stocking cap is on the side, and they have like 5 eyeballs, and then there's 3 ears, and they're just like the most Picasso snowmen you've ever seen.
That's hilarious.
And I'm like, I love these people. They're wonderful. I just fell in love with them. I was like, they threw all my instructions out the window.
That's great.
And made the most lovely little wooden snowmen that you've ever seen. But that's Martha too.
Yeah.
That's what I'm the long way around to that answer. I think I let go of comfort and comfortable, and I have learned to embrace the unknown and the adventure that comes with that. So Martha too is probably way different. And I see people I never saw before.
Yeah.
If you've pushed your husband around in a wheelchair for about 8 months, you know what restaurants to go to.
Yeah.
So life has a lot of barriers still for people who are disabled.
Yeah.
And I would like to see more accessibility for people who manage that and their caregivers.
Well, that's beautiful. I really appreciate you sharing your story and telling us about it and, and living it out. I mean, it's a big difference to intellectually kind of understand about it and write it, but to live it out every day is...
Well, thank you. Thank you for your interest in my story and in this community. And I hope that I have been able to share just some light on how delightful they are. We can all be difficult and we can all be delightful, right?
That's right. I know I'm difficult,
everybody.
whether I brain injury or not. Anything that you, in your notes and just in kind of the process that you missed or that you'd like to share that if you left and were like, oh man, I really wanted to say that.
I know I will think about that probably later on. I do plan events. We were sort of talking about ways for this community to find each other and socialize. I plan events as well for the Brain Injury Association of Louisiana. So a couple of years ago, we did a silent disco at Cyport, which was super fun.
Yeah.
I've done Playground, where we painted pottery, because they're a great community resource. And we did a Meet Me at the Museum at Norton's this past summer.
Okay.
Where we all just got to go. And it is a wonderfully accessible museum.
Yeah, it is.
It is. So those
Lots
are
of ramps.
things, yes. And the staff there was really wonderful. So just a chance for those who, in the daily run of things, don't get seen. I'd just like to have them
be seen. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, if you're listening and that fits with you, how can they reach out to you? What's your best way of getting connected?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. Facebook is the best way.
Okay.
And David and I have a Facebook page, and it is called Supper on the Shelf.
Okay.
Would you like to know why?
Yeah, tell me about it.
My daughter was in grad school, and all those girls hung out at our house, and they were starving college students, and we fed them. He always cooked, I always cooked. And they said, well, you should do cooking classes so we can learn how to cook. And we're like, We don't have time for that, but we can post them videos on the Facebook. So it started out as how to cook on a budget, supper on the shelf from your pantry item.
Yeah.
But it has expanded into a lot of what we do in the brain injury community.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. I'll definitely tag that and share that and look at that.
Us up on Supper on the Shelf. And I each month I post about the Caregiver Coffee or the monthly support groups at Think First. And if there are resources or things, I post it on that.
Yeah.
And great recipes, Clint.
That's awesome. I'll check it out. Anything else?
I just wanted to touch on one thing that you said about resilience. Recovery, I think, is looking back to regain what was lost. And recovery is important. I think that's step one. I think resilience is learning to adapt to what was lost and move forward. Find ways to move forward. I would actually like to add restoration, because God uses what happened to fulfill his work in us, and he uses it to help others. So that's my third R. I like restoration.
Absolutely. Yeah, restoration therapy is the type of therapy that I do. So
Great. I didn't even know that.
Yep. So, that idea that there's, there's not just healing and changing behaviors, but actually restoring things.
Yeah.
And I know you, and I know that you love the Lord, and I think when you think about eternity, that's where our hope is. In these days where somebody's sick or somebody has cancer or somebody has a disability or somebody's not with us anymore, if our hope is in these physical bodies in this world now, then that's going to lead us to collapse. But if our hope is in that restoration of all things, the return of Christ, and that we are going to be, his bride married to him and one with one another without any more tears and without any more sorrow and without any more shame and pain and angst and roofs to fall off of and cancer to get. And
right.
I mean, man, what a place to put our hope.
And it will not disappoint.
It is not going to disappoint.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And yet in the meantime, if that sounds like a pipe dream to you, you have people around you who get these little moments of heaven now,
And I love how God can use our brokenness, our broken things in this life to reshape us and connect us to people. So what a gift, in a sense, that I can still be useful, and regardless of the suffering and the difficulties that we've been through, I think everyone in his kingdom is useful.
Yeah. Scripture says absolutely necessary. It's
I like
been
that.
The theme this year for me is just trying to remember, that as the body of Christ, each member is equal and doesn't need to be another part. It needs to be the thing that it is, whether they have brain injury or cancer or a disability, like they're all his children, right? And if we can really look at one another as absolutely necessary to magnify the head, which is Christ.
Yeah.
Then everybody around us, it's not just us versus them. It's not just they're annoying today or I'm annoying today. It's, oh no, all of this stuff comes together in the supernatural way that is absolutely necessary.
I like that. And no spare parts.
No.
We're all necessary. I love that. That's a great reminder. Thank you.
Well, no, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on. And, it's been very encouraging to me just in my own life to remember, to push through and persevere and, be resilient and
overcome technical difficulties.
Yeah, exactly. Totally, miss the backstory and kill your husband off. And,
That's very funny, Clint.
Oh, I'm going to laugh about that. I was in my pain for a second. But,
oh, boy.
Yeah. You do 179 podcasts. You might mix it up every once in a while. But thank you so much, guys, for listening. Thank you, Martha, for being you. And thank you for your husband and all he's doing. And we continue to pray for his recovery and for y'all's recovery. And that in the midst of it, that you would continue to see God do amazing things. And I know you would say this, but thanks to all the people that have supported Martha and David through this. And,
yes, absolutely. Our connections, our community, and now it's collaboration. It's great. We're moving on to the next one. So
that's awesome. Well, anything I can do, let me know. I mean, we have a ton of counselors, and y'all got, I know y'all get good counselors at Broadmoor, but anything I could ever do to come in, and if you want me to do a free education or talk or like just be a support for a group or something, I would love to help however I can.
You can count on it. Okay. I will be calling you.
Yeah, it'd be great. All right. Thank you guys for listening. God bless you and have a good week.